representative to the United Nations in New York, and that is Ambassador Usman Sarki, as well as legal practitioner and secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association, Birnin Kebbi branch, Mr. Umar Aminu Kalgo. Now, Ambassador, coming back to you, I wanted to lean a bit more on this whole subject of democracy, which is where the whole trouble came from, in the sense that they, along with those that had done it before, decided, that is in Niger, decided that they were not satisfied with the quality of democracy, of their democracy, the quality of governance that they were experiencing. And so the military had taken matters into its own hand. Now, that is a very, very, very painful idea to a lot of students of politics and democracy in the region, because there was this whole notion of never again. We're not going back there. But some other scholars and researchers and political scientists have been saying that, well, that's the thing with this democracy. It's not really ever the same in two different, with two different countries. The way we see it might not be the way the other persons see it. Never mind that we are all guided perhaps by the, the formula, in quotes, of one man, one vote. People are actually intervening in the democratic process. Now, this is the idea that Nigeria and indeed ECOWAS, even though ECOWAS is an economic union, that they pushed against, that no, we all have to, there have to be some irreducible minimums, and democracy is one of those. Now, what would your commentary be on the notion that people will see democracy differently from country to country?
Yes, thank you very much. That is a very fundamental question or issue that you raised. Democracy is not a potted plant that you will take from one country and transplant it in another. It must have a culture, a tradition, and also a philosophical grounding to it in order for it to thrive in a particular climate and culture and country. Therefore, its adaptation and also patient nurturing is very important. You cannot, at every mistake done by the government or the administration in power, demand for its termination or truncation immediately. You must give room for conciliation, for reflection, for discussion, for consultation and agreement on how to move the country and the democratic order forward. I'll just give you an example. I returned from Dakar, Senegal, only on Tuesday. The elections in that country, presidential election, which we went to observe, took place on Sunday, the 24th of March. It went on peacefully, and that has a tradition behind it. There are challenges in Senegal, economic difficulties, even unrest in the Casamance region and so forth, but they never resorted to actually the obliteration of democracy or the democratic order through military intervention. They discussed their differences collectively and subjected them to the opinion of the populace, of the electorate, in periodic intervals of elections. And we saw a new president emerge. And in Senegal, when the outgoing president Macky Sall decided to extend the period of the election, there were protests in the country. Civil society protested, media protested, the opposition protested, although the National Assembly endorsed in a very acrimonious session, endorsed his decision. But at the end of it all, the Constitutional Court of that country annulled the decision, and the election subsequently went ahead and took place on the 24th of this month. And we have a new president today in Senegal. Likewise, in Niger, the excuse given by the military regime or Chiani and his fellows was that the insurgency was not being, the counter-insurgency effort was not being prosecuted diligently by the government, and that insurgents are growing in strength, economic hardship was growing, and also the relationship with France the erstwhile colonial power was not satisfactory. But Chiani was actually the head of the Presidential Guard for about 11 years before then. He did not complain during the previous administrations of other presidents. They saw an opportunity and seized it, and they justified their activity by the usual resort to condemnation and pointing fingers at internal challenges. Let me remind you, sir, that actually there was unanimous international opinion that President Mahamadou Bazoum was doing well in power. The economy of Niger was growing. The insurgency was being met decisively. The military was being motivated in terms of being re-equipped and retrained to meet the threats to national security in that country. But suddenly they woke up one morning to terminate the administration and place the president under arrest, and they gave the excuse, as we have listed above. So it is the nature of unconstitutional changes in government to provide excuses and rationalize the reasons why they took government, forcefully. Now, the situation has not led to any improvement in that country. The armed forces in Niger are losing more territories to insurgency, to insurgents. Economy is getting from bad to worse. And also there are difficulties in terms of negotiation and access to international finance and investment. So these are challenges that really we must bear in mind when we discuss democracy. Democracy, as I said earlier, is not something like cut and paste that one size fits all. It has its peculiarities depending on the nature and the way the country is constituted. But the most important aspect about it is for us to have patience in nurturing democracy to a level whereby it will solidify and crystallize and take root in our culture, in our traditions, in our philosophy and outlooks, for it to be an indispensable system of government in our countries.
Okay. Thank you, Excellency. I was going to come to Aminu Kalgo, Umar Aminu Kalgo, for his thoughts on the very question that the ambassador has just spoken on, especially against the backdrop of your saying that, well, in the situation that we find ourselves, this probably could be looked at as one of the best. Please hold that thought because a caller has come in, and so I don't want to lose him. So I'll quickly take that caller, and then we'll come back, and I'll get your thoughts on, the question of democracy in Africa and our attitude to it as it relates to these kind of happenings. But in the meantime, Maazio Korafo, I didn't want to lose you. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Ambassador. The issue of this Nigerian border issue, at least, is hope. What is the hope? There is what we call, during that closure, there is a lot of awareness for Africans to learn from what happened and what is happening and what is going on. And you see, when that border was closed, you know what happened then? You see, Ukraine came there and started participating. Moscow came there and started participating. What were they coming? They were coming there to collect the natural resources there to go and do and build up their military hardware in their country. Now you ask yourself, in Africa here, what are we doing to make use of all those things that this other people come to collect and go back to their place and harness and start sending it back to us as hardware? What do we do? See, for democracy to move, for what happened in Senegal, we have seen a young man now, 42 years old. What is that? He was in prison because the people wanted him. Abstractly, what I mean by bursary, the people wanted bursary. Upon that, he was dumped in the prison. What happened? People still voted for him. People still campaigned for him. Now, what do they? There's a time now. The people should know that the politics or democracy in Africa is generally made now to balance. That let it be what the masses want. Let it be what electorate did. Do you know that when that border was, what happened now? Because of onions, let's go back to the food item. Because of onions in Nigeria was very high. At least I was with them where they were having buy a bag of onions at 120 something, 100 something. What is happening now? That onion they were selling, they buy that during the closure of that border. What happened now? It's now 30,000 to 40,000 naira. Have you seen the difference? So democracy, it must be a balanced equation, not give and take and I give. That is what we should be thinking about, because a situation whereby we sit down and think about the dictatorship in African content in terms of politics, in terms of democracy. It's not healthy. It must them now. Senegal said France, they don't want the let them go. And assuming that Africa, other countries cannot say our colonial masters, go, let us sit down and look at ourselves and find it. But if you go outside to complain that you are from Africa, they start asking, what is wrong with your own economy? You have a vibrant economy. It's because you don't want the needful. That is right. So they say it's time for Africans to do what? Think wise, think positively, go back to the basics. Let the colonial masters go. Let them go. Let us alone. Let us settle our differences.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much, Mazio Korafo. I didn't want to lose your call that you had placed while we were speaking with the ambassador. And there are aspects of, what you've just said, too, that can be factored into what I had prepared Mr. Umar Aminu Kalgo for. And taking what the ambassador said, that, well, he commented on democracy will be seen differently from place to place, and that it's, it's not easily just replaceable anywhere you take it. It's not like you can photocopy it and say, this is it. Your background, your culture, your environment will also factor into it. Now, this whole matter of prosperity, since this closure of borders, we've had this phenomenon where, our brothers in Niger are now talking about their currency being stronger than ours, in the sense that nowadays they're seeing that the Naira, which has taken a pummeling, as everybody knows, it's not really the king anymore, and that their country is actually better. They're able to get more for their current currency than they were able to get with the Nigerian Naira before. But fundamentally, I wanted your comments as well on the notion of democracy is not the same from one place to the next, especially in Africa.
Democracy as a political system, no one can precisely, there are some main features that are associated with democracy, and that is the opportunity to freely choose leaders by the citizens. And the disparity in the definition of democracy is a standing one in the world view of the political systems that we have today. Because for whatever, even the Republic of China that only have a single party, in its own perception, it's called itself a democratic country. So you see, there can be that disparity. But the important thing here to us is how should the principle of political principle should undertone our relationships, either state by state or as a regional body. That is what is come to play here. And I believe in all the Western countries, major Western countries, be it US or UK or France, they did not dictate their relationship based on a doctrinaire policy that they only relate with people that are practicing democracy as they believe it should. Because they have relationship with a lot of the Gulf state countries where you have absolute monarchies. And also even countries like China, despite their notion that China is a dictatorship, is an authoritarian state, but still they maintain relationship. And also they partake in some other international, like the United Nations. Even the United Nations did not stipulate a condition like that. So what I'm saying, this is an unfortunate thing to have a coup d'etat, definitely, I believe, but that should not be something that will now cost us our relationship, because our relationship is vital in coming out of what we are seeing here. And so you can see even this the coup d'etat that happened, one of the things they are leveraging on to get support of their indigents is that they are now removing their country from the shackles of their former master. So I want to look at it in this larger perspective. And another angle.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon, sir. I'm so sorry, but there's a person waiting to join the program on the phone. I don't want to lose him. So sorry to have butted in. Sadiq in Niger State, good morning and thank you very much for holding on.
Good morning, Mr. Iloni.
Thank you very much for calling in.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much. You look at the issue at stake. You know that the Nigerian taking that decision is not purely of Nigeria, it's that of ECOWAS. Unfortunately, we eventually personalize it as if it is Nigeria or the president of Nigeria taking that decision. Incidentally, that was when the president became the chairman of ECOWAS instantly. But when you look at that decision being taken and you look at the action being taken now, you now ask yourself, why was he taken in the first place when none of those actions from Niger have been tampered with? Don't you think this is going to weaken the structure of West African community by doing something you don't have capacity to implement? Because what I see here is that all throughout, there is no capacity on the part of Nigeria, on the part of ECOWAS, to take that decision because of possibly the external influence, which we don't see. And we have our domestic affairs that actually biting us, but because on the issue of security, which equally affect possibly the decision we are taking now to open up. I'm not saying opening the boundaries for economic purpose, because ECOWAS is for economic purpose. When we do that, it's right. But we are going to still have this kind of thing, because as long as Nigeria...
okay, Sadiq, I beg your pardon for butting in. I'm so sorry to butt in, but time is the issue. I'm so sorry for butting in, Sadiq, but I thank you very much. I got your question or your observation, and I'd like to put it to our guests this morning, and we're fast running out of time. So I'm going to give Ambassador Usman Sarki the first stab at the question. Why did we, that is ECOWAS, why did we take the decision if we didn't have the means to back up the decision, is the question that Sadiq from Niger State is posing.
Well, I think, we have had opportunity to discuss this issue in previous programs when I appeared on your station on TVC. Very briefly, I will say that, it was a collective decision of ECOWAS, and the communique of immediately after the coup that was released by ECOWAS was actually written, discussed, and negotiated by ECOWAS, not by the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But when all is said and done, and from the perspectives of hindsight, it is very important that this administration really looks at Nigeria's foreign policy structure, objectives, and the national interest very critically. Our priorities must be ECOWAS and the rest of Africa, and that is where our resources and our energy should be deployed. Without ECOWAS and without Africa, our standing in the world will be insignificant and will be diminished. So we have to train our diplomats in the niceties and finesse of diplomacy. And now when the government is contemplating the deployment of ambassadors, I think it will be advisable for the president to send his principal representatives, people who are very, very well articulated and grounded in diplomacy, in government, and also people who have the courage and deportment to represent him effectively and efficiently and creditably in the community of nations. This is the way of retrieving our prestige and standing in Africa and the rest of the world, I think.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Nigerian Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations in New York. Thank you very much for making the time for us this morning. We really appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
The pleasure's all ours. And on to Umar Aminu Kalgo. Your thoughts on the question that was posed by Sadiq from Niger State there that the ambassador has just commented on. Why did ECOWAS go that way if we didn't have the wherewithal to instill, enforce that situation, such now that we've now, for the reasons we've discussed on this program, pulled back? We have only seconds, please, so keep it short if you can.
I think it's a very interesting question because to me, I would say, well, the important thing is now we are getting it right. But really, I think it's a question that ought to be considered squarely because sanctions have not been working. We have seen them in Iraq, we have seen them in Syria, they are still there on Iran, and they are, most of the time, counterproductive. I think ECOWAS have not considered that issue. To me, they would have condemned it, but not to, heat it up to the level it was heated earlier. So I think looking retrospectively, as he said, now we have come to a point where it is clear that that action is not worth taking to that extent. So the only good news is that I believe now we are on track.
All right, then. Thank you very much. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much. You understand my butting in. Really do appreciate you. Umar Aminu Kalgo, legal practitioner and secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association, Birnin Kebbi branch. Thank you very much. And we express our thanks to the ambassador, Usman Sarki, earlier on. That's our program. We're going to have to leave it here. Do please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folare. Bye-bye for now.